All right, listen up, independent media, everybody out there who cares about the world that you live in. We have to create action. We have to be actionable. We need to know what we are doing in this world. What is freedom? How do we actually achieve it? Okay, so many people put out all these videos all the time about news, what's currently happening in the world, forgetting exactly what needs to be done by requirement to change the world. And it's not just education, that's just one part of it. It's not just bringing people together, that's just another part of it. There's 4 steps in total, which I'm going to share with you are the only steps for us to achieve freedom as a human species. That means anywhere in the world, at any time, can we achieve this. Now, but when I say any time, I'm also saying, well, yes, it depends on you. So, okay, you might be enslaved. It might be really hard for you to achieve freedom, but it still depends on you. And I'm sick of seeing so many people put out all these videos about all the stuff that's happening in the world, or ideologies, etc., but not talking about what needs to get done. You know, people are always asking, what do we need to do? We need to get together. We need to get firearms and face the state. No, that's not what we have to do. Achieving freedom has 4 specific steps I'm going to outline here. I've outlined it many times in my previous works and previous presentations, in my books as well. I've written 2 books that also detail these 4 steps, but here I'm making a presentation dedicated to simplifying it down. So we're going to try to make this go as simple and as fast as possible, but for you to understand what needs to get done, because there are steps required to change the world and for freedom, which again we must understand. So let's begin. The 4 only steps to total freedom. I'm saying these are the only ways you can get there. And I'm going to use examples from the past, okay? So movements that were successful in the past, observing what they did, how they did it, and why it succeeded. Step 1 is represent. This is also known as the overlooked step. Okay, a lot of people don't want to use symbolism. They're getting out of a system, right? They see the system as being tyrannical or being slave-like, and they don't want to be slaves to that system. They don't want to be supporting that tyranny. They want to free themselves, and they want to free other people, so they're educating others. They're like, man, you got to see this information. Look at how much you're being lied to about. But they realize, you have to realize that every time you share material with someone, even if it's just a video like this, or if it's a paper material, maybe a brochure or a book, that's all forms of representation here. It includes shared symbology, material, and flags. If we're leaving a system that uses flags and occult symbolism and trying to manipulate people in different ways, we have to compete with that. That's how they got people into the state of indoctrination. We need to de-indoctrinize people out of it. Okay, take people out of the dark occultism that they have been delved into for the majority of their lives since birth, believing in these systems of tyranny, allowing these systems of tyranny to grow. Okay, and we're going to get into what those systems of tyranny are, how you understand what a tyranny is, how do you deprogram people. This is all in these 4 steps. I know it sounds like, how do you put it in 4 steps? Yes, I can put it in 4 steps. Okay, I can keep talking all about it. I can go and create even longer list if I had to. But these are the 4 steps mainly. Okay, and there's still work involved for you, but this is very, very basic, and this is what's essential. This is what is necessary in the mass of the public. The only place where the majority matters is that the most people recognize this knowledge, even if it's just independent media alone. That's millions of people right off the bat. Okay, very powerful information I'm sharing with you here. Flags. You have to create unique flags. Every revolution in history, and I'm not calling for revolution, I'm calling for an awakening. It doesn't have to be where people are taking up arms to the state and, you know, fighting their own government necessarily, but there's a reason why we have the Second Amendment in America, why our founding fathers said, well, this is why we are arming the populace. It's because of our own governments. This is what creates no freedom in the world, is the lack thereof, the forced imposition of will. That is government. The monopoly of violence, okay? And this is what governments have always done for thousands of years, is rise, fall, democide, number 1 cause of unnatural death. You have people having to stand up. They have to bring their moral courage with them, and then the governments fall. But then is almost instantly replaced with another government on top of that, which gets even more tyrannical than the one before. Why is that? Well, perhaps it's because we're not looking at the root cause to what is actually creating these governments, what's actually causing the tyranny, what's actually causing the democide, the slavery, the violence, etc. Okay? Now, you have to first get there. Well, this is a video. This is a form of representation. I'm representing the knowledge, right? I'm saying here, look at these slides. These are representing knowledge. Look at me. I'm representing the words. I'm speaking them. Okay? This is representation at work. This shirt I'm wearing, this is representation for a website, wearechange.org. What have they done in the past couple years? They haven't done as many confrontations. Where's the We Are Change part? I haven't seen them encouraging people to say, hey, let's get together, let's do rallies, let's start doing some real life activism, because we're all getting censored online. You'd think that perhaps one of the good action steps would be to encourage real life change. Well, trust me, these 4 steps also address that. I am criticizing independent media, and I'm also criticizing most people who claim to have solutions when they're not looking at these fundamental just basics to what I call natural change, which is literally changing the minds of people, because changing the minds of people changes their actions, and the actions change the world condition. So getting there first is a sign of appeal. You need to appeal with different symbology, okay? As opposed to the political campaigns and promoting one candidate that's only short-term and temporary and saying, let them do all the work for us. No. Focus on the ideas. You want freedom? Make freedom the focal point, okay? You think everybody in independent media can unite on freedom? I think it's pretty darn basic. We should unite on freedom. Now, if we shared symbols, we shared materials, then how big of a base would you gain? How much more noise would you make? How much more would you say that we stand on the side of freedom, and these people, these few who, choose to, presume to take control over us, how much influence do they gonna make? Who's really with the people? Is it these people who claim to represent us, or is it the people themselves standing up saying, this is who we are and this is where we stand with freedom? That's it. Not with this party, that party. We don't have to put something into legislation and pass another person. Sorry guys, that is all wrong. That's not how we change the world. That's not how you change people's minds. It has nothing to do with education. It has nothing to do with understanding freedom. If people don't understand freedom, would you expect people to achieve freedom? You need to have education within this. So better expect that is the upcoming steps, okay? But number 1, like I said, is representation. I'm here speaking this. This is a form of representation. It's step 1. It's always overlooked because people want to jump right into the education, just as I just did. I'm educating you about representation, right? But you first clicked on the video. You were appealed by the title. You were appealed by the thumbnail. That's representation. Look at the flag in the background of my slides here. It says no union with slavery. We can't unite as humanity if we're enslaved, okay? We are permanently divided. Divide and conquer. Our species is constantly divided by politics, by religion, these things created by man-made systems to control humanity, these natural systems. And that's why, my main message is nature is the answer. And, I'm glad to stand with organizations like We Are Change and use their symbology, but we need to stick together. We need to have some shared materials, because then our presence gets even greater. And better yet, if we can have it customizable to where people can replicate these same symbols and such, right? You'll see I have some flags in the background. The middle one in the white is actually the symbol that I use commonly on nita.one. It's a website I created where people can take flags and they share it across the world. They can recreate it. It's very simple. It's just 4 letters. Nature is the answer with just the abbreviations, and you can remake the symbol yourself. And you should remake it yourself and customize it to your will and make it so that way it's different from everyday flags like the American flag. If you realize that your government is tyrannical, how does it help to still use the same flag of that government, especially one that represents war? Right? And we're going to go over some examples of this slide, so I'm not going to get too carried away, but you do want to make target markets when you represent and say, hey, who's going to be interested in this knowledge, right? Who's going to be interested in truth and freedom? Who cares about what's going on in the world? This is an appeal for care, and we also need to make an appeal, period. Using your art, your creative abilities, you have it as a human. Do not let the systems of dehumanizing and denaturing control take that creativity out of you. You can find it within yourself. Everybody has something to contribute here. It's not solely on me. It's not solely on you. We are the change together. We are change, but we have to be it, okay? We shouldn't just be some media organization, okay? I'm talking to you, we are change.org. I'm talking to all the independent media. We're not just some media organization? Are we in it for truth? Are we really? Then let's move it forward into the world. Let's create some action, okay? Share this video with your loved ones and friends, because no one is going to talk about these specific steps, okay? So step 1 must lead to and reflect step 2. Okay, it must lead to and reflect step 2. So that means the flags, for example, must represent the knowledge, and it must lead to the knowledge. Well, let's look at some example flags right here, okay? The No Union with Slavery flag is an unknown flag. I chose it on purpose because it's unknown. We can revive it, okay? Same thing with the Don't Tread on Me flag. A lot of people are using this nowadays, and they're like, yeah, because I believe in, private ownership or freedom, and I don't want people stepping on my rights, my natural rights. But where does it lead people to go anywhere? We've had this flag for 300 years, and people have it all over the place, but does it lead anyone anywhere? If you notice, the flag on the bottom right has a website in the corner. It leads people to knowledge, to information, okay? And that is what makes it slightly more modernized, not just the fact that you can recreate the letters and recreate the logo and customize it as you wish, okay? If you notice, there's also other flags. In the top left corner, we have the U.S. peace flag, which the American Common Law Assembly and the American States Assembly, they use this flag as their movement flag. And it's important because it makes a big difference to say we are against our current government. We're not against America, we're not against the land, we're not against the people. We're for the people against the government, which is not for the people. Okay, big difference in that flag. People are going to look at, and they're simply by having these flags, people are going to be like, what is that? I've never seen that before. It's going to cause conversations. It's going to lead to knowledge. But making it so where it even creates more knowledge is having perhaps a website within it, is having great symbolism in it where people can understand it, not like hidden, dark, occult symbolism, okay? And it's something that leads to step 2. Like I said, education, that's step 2. But if you look at the middle of the left side, you see you have Gandhi's flag, right? Gandhi's flag is for the Indian independence. Same thing with the flag right under that was the American U.S. Independence flag. Notice that they created new flags when they said, we want to be free. Okay, a lot of people are using the old flags, even though they realize their own government is tyrannical. Do you expect to go anywhere with that? Okay, do you expect that to educate anybody into the same position where you stand as to why you're using that flag? You need to show why it is what you believe in, and you need to show it through representation, okay? That's step 1. Now, step 2 is educate, okay? So step 2 is educate, step 1 was represent. When you have these materials in this presentation, it's going to lead people to knowledge, such as learning what action steps to take. This is known as the strategic step, because how are you going to deprogram people from this system that they have been born into and believe certain things, right? It could be anything that you think is important. Well, let me tell you, if it's about freedom, which is for pretty much then any other topic that you consider conspiracy or questioning the status quo, then you must know what statism is. You must know what slavery is, okay? I wrote a book called Slavery Gone for Good. This goes over what you need to know. Very short and simple, so it can be shared, taught, and learned. Okay? There's other people who have written books too. Larkin Rose wrote this book, The Most Dangerous Superstition. Okay? I'm going to have other examples so you can see, okay? Because I'm not alone. There's so many people educating people on the subject, but not enough. And so many people are distracted looking at today's news that they don't want to look at this. It's unfortunate. If I put out a video talking about, well, this drama, this controversy, people are going to click it because it's the latest thing that's in their face. Yet, they're in the independent media. Yet, they're not conformist. Yet, they're watching the same exact videos as everybody else in independent media. They're still in echo chambers. They're still in ego validation chains within themselves, okay? So the key with education and understanding statism, because it's the root to freedom, it's understanding that nobody has the right to rule over your life and property other than you, understanding that there is no such thing as authority vested in certain human beings, and therefore everybody is either equal in rights naturally or nobody has the right to rule over another fellow human being and claim to represent them or have more rights than they do, because that's unnatural. That's claiming to be a king. Like, what are we, 6,000 years gone by, and we still are using these systems today? We still have these religions that are controlling people's minds. I'm not just talking about organized religion. I'm talking about money. I'm talking about politics. These are religions. People are praying, please change the world for me. Politicians, I'll vote this person in office and they'll change everything for me, even though they're getting my will imposed upon everybody else, and they get to tax people and steal their money against others' will. How is that moral? But the moral question is always left out of politics. It's always left out of the mainstream. Why? Because that is what hits on statism. That's what hits on slavery. How did we end chattel slavery in the 1800s? That was one form of slavery. It was understanding morality, okay? And then the slaves had to teach themselves. They had to be knowledgeable themselves to free themselves. And they had help of other people. And then they freed themselves using their own self-defense necessary to do it. Okay? We need to do something very similar to that. Okay? Now, if we can educate at least one community, so we have representation in one community, education in one community, that is fantastic. At least one community. And the reason why is because of the next steps. Okay? You'll understand. But it's going to be easier to educate communities that are already connected or can be connected. Okay, there's many methods that you can use to educate people. This is where you need to use your smarts, not just in advertising, marketing, applying your business sense, your creative sense, but you need to think in terms of action here, since you now understand what it is that targets freedom. An idea, not a person, not an event, not a temporary thing, not a legislation, an idea, a universal idea that has been kept away from the public for 6,000 years. That is statism. Let me tell you, we've had slavery for 4,000 years until it got rid of in the 1800s. Well, longer than that, sorry. And could you believe we had slavery for that long? It's only been 200 years since we got rid of chattel slavery. Okay, everybody thought, oh well, how would the economy work? How would everything work without the slaves? And you know what? Without the slaves, things are working even better now. We've had innovation like crazy, but it moved into other forms of slavery, political slavery, economic slavery, you name it, right? You name it. And the problem is, really, any problem is aggregated when you have somebody who says, hey, I want to rule over everybody else, and everybody says, hey, that's legitimate. When someone says, hey, we know violence is okay in this scenario, and everybody's like, yeah, violence is okay if this person with a badge and a uniform does it, but it's not okay if this person does it, because this person has more rights than the other person. Well, how is that fair? Nobody wants to address the moral cause. I'm going to put 5 questions on the screen for you. Since you're new to statism or slavery, I want you to answer these 5 questions in your head. And if you're totally new to this, like I said, I'm going to have another slide after this with examples so you can learn more about it for yourself, so then you can educate other people about it. I'm telling you, this is the only way you can achieve true, real freedom, okay? You want to seek people who are seeking knowledge, like I'd hope yourself, because you're watching this video to learn what you need to learn and also what you need to do to take action, which is also required by learning. You need to learn not just what knowledge is there that has been kept hidden from you, but that same knowledge is that of which will also free you, and you need to commit action that will free you. So you need to know both, that of knowledge and action. One to know the truth and another to know how to get to the truth. 2 different things. It's a very hard thing to do, especially in a world where we're constantly, like I said, in our own echo chambers, and we feel like we're in our own communities. Well, I'm sorry, we got to expand, and we need to reach the everyday public. We need to reach people in the dark. We can't be afraid. We can build our own communities. That's a good way to do it. We can do that, right? But we should be open to the mass public as well and show them why it is that what we're doing. We're going to get there. Now, we need to get people on the same page. Like I said, if you already have independent media groups, you have a community garden, and your whole community's connected, fantastic. That's a perfect target market for this type of knowledge. And then they need to make the decision into step 3, okay? You need to know that when you have this knowledge, the root cause to freedom, that you will make history, even if you're ridiculed for doing the next step, because the next step requires a lot of courage, right? It's a lot of courage to first non-conform to society and understand what knowledge is being kept hidden from people, but it takes a lot more courage to stand on that ground and say, I'm not going to let anyone mess with what I know to be true, what I know to be natural to my humanity. okay, which is ultimately what's being attacked by systems that denature us, by systems that dehuman us. And that is tyrannical systems, that's slave systems, and they become more slave-like by the day the more people do not commit these actions. Okay, step 2, which is education, must lead to and reflect step 3. Okay, so we have the flag, we have materials that must lead to the education. People always forget the material part, okay, but that leads to the education. People forget the education part, especially about morals. Here's 4 resources you can learn about this. There's a video titled Statism, the Most Dangerous Religion. It's, restricted by YouTube, right? But I'm sure you could find it on other platforms. Larkin Rose is the speaker in this video. You can check out his works, tons of great works. Mark Passio does presentations. You know what? He gives it through a whole different perspective, through something called natural law. And it's okay. We can have different perspectives on the same subject as long as we're targeting the root cause, which is statism, which is freedom, which is understanding what slavery is. We all have different perspectives. These are 5 different works of different kinds, and they all share different perspectives, and they may not all agree on the same way of how to word things, but at the end of the day, they have the same common theme of addressing slavery, addressing statism, okay, which is a mental belief that somebody else has the right to rule over your life and property other than you, okay, or that you can give such a right to other people even though such a right does not exist naturally and has been responsible ultimately for, like I said, democide. So if I'm saying, well, this is important and this is how we change the world, create true freedom, I'm also claiming that this is how we save millions of lives, literally. Okay, millions, billions, and even for the future generations. Okay, step 3 is super important because one community is very educated and knows what they're doing, they're gonna feel an urge of like, we need to do something, not just educate other people, but stand our ground. Because this is what's going to cause the tidal wave. This is what's going to cause the ripple effect. This is what's going to change the world and cause an energy shift and dynamic. This is known as the freedom step. And that is that community willingly standing ground and not committing any statist acts. Okay, because statism is a mentality, but those mentalities, again, your knowledge becomes your actions. If people are statist or they're involved in statism, they're going to allow statist acts, and they're going to create a statist world where there is states everywhere, tyrannical governments taking over the lives of people, and people are wondering, why are my freedoms going away? Why is government taking over everything? Why can't we just limit it and make it smaller? They don't know what statism is, the very thing that creates the state. So how would you expect them to know how to do that, right? To limit it at all, if that was even possible. Now, standing for and defending freedom is ultimately what you're doing here. This community gets their firearms, they get their defense, and they say, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to stand my ground. I know I'm free. I'm not going to pay taxes. And if you look at all the revolutions in history, especially some of the most important ones, a lot of them were over taxes, taxation. Okay, and that was their biggest reason to revolt. Nowadays, we have crazy taxes, even worse than before, and yet people still haven't done anything. Why? Oh, maybe it's the social media, maybe it's fear, maybe it's technological, maybe it's because, there's all these things, but ultimately, it's fear, as in a lot of people, and they don't have other people with them. Having freedom cells and other organizations that brings people together is great, but even freedom cells is incomplete without these other steps. You cannot have mass marketing and networking without understanding what it is that freedom is, so you can free the rest of the world and free the whole world, period. You're not just to be free yourself, you're not just to have a good time yourself. If you care about the world and you're a selfless person, you don't have an ego that much, then you would care for other people and want them to be free. You might think it's a lost cause, but you have to have some sort of faith within you to say, yes, these people are human beings. Otherwise, I'm just as bad as the psychopaths in power who have no empathy and will bring us to war without thinking about the people, who will trample on people's rights for the common good of everybody else. Right? They make these claims and they don't make sense. They're counterintuitive. We don't want to be counterintuitive either. So we don't want to bring offense to the government or anybody who works within, because we need to realize they're still humans. They're still people like you and I. They're just deceived as you were back then. right? How did you get out of that? Share that with them. Find their humanity, find their empathy within them. There's somewhere you can find it. Where is the spark of nature still within their soul? It's gotta be somewhere. Okay, you have to have faith in that. You need to stand on it and defend it and constantly go at it. Don't beat around the bush like they want to. Don't feed into that. Stand true, stay on statism. Don't go on to all these other subjects they want you to focus on. Stay on the root cause and address it, right? You know, people are getting deplatformed on this one platform. We'll bring them over to this platform. How do you do that? Everybody joins this platform. Now, how do you have Brighteon and BitChute, these alternative platforms getting so big? Because everybody's doing it. Everybody has the shared platform now, and everybody's marketing and advertising for it. That's such a great example of step one, right? But then that website now has to defend their ground, say we're going to stay up and running. Why? Because we know we can. We have the ability to, and we are meant to have a voice. We're meant to have free speech, right? This is the point of defense, but we need to do this in real life, okay? We have the knowledge, we understand what statism is, we don't want to pay taxes, we get our communities together, we take our firearms, and we stay our ground. We live our lives the way we're supposed to. And if the government comes in, you know what? They expose themselves. The systems of control expose themselves using their own people against their supposed, claimed, own populace to try to control them, to try to ease them down because they're going against the system. Okay? Now, what's really important within this is that the populace who is defending their ground must document the event. Okay? And even if they don't, I'm sure a lot of media will, and people will catch up onto it with the internet, and that will cause a lot of controversy. That will cause a lot of talk about what they did. And if people want to trace back why this community did what they did, well, the flags will help. The materials will help. Everybody will know why they did what they did, right? And people will find the same information, and people will do the same thing. And people will see why they did it. They would see the government's corruption. There's going to be so much spark and controversy, but at least some action will be done, okay? And people will defend themselves. Am I saying some lives are going to have to be expensed here? Am I saying some war might happen? No, because I'm saying people have to just defend themselves. That's it. It's a matter of human will and confidence. Death is not to be feared. It's freedom or death. If you were not free to begin with, your life isn't worth living. You have freedom, property, and then, you know, happiness, right? We say the life, pursuit of happiness, all this stuff. Well, freedom comes first, okay? If freedom comes first before all of it, if you're not free, then life isn't worth living. Okay, so life doesn't go before freedom. Freedom comes before life. This is very important, and a lot of the people I mentioned before also talk about this. Now, you have to show the world a demonstration by this action, this courage, okay? And you want to document the event, have independent media show it, have all media stations show it, get it out there. Step 3 must show step 1 and step 2. But we're not done. That's just step 3, okay? And remember, this is just like the end of chattel slavery. The slaves had to free themselves. They had to defend themselves in order to be freed. And so many people did it that it was uncontrollable. Even just 1% of the population has caused every revolution in history. Just 1% of the slave population could cause a huge outbreak, okay? It's just that simple. If enough people do the same things. I mean, look how many people are conforming in today's world. You'd think it wouldn't be so hard to create something like this, especially when there's already millions of people in independent media. So what are you waiting for? Share this video with them. Share this information with them. Okay, here's some examples. You have Gandhi's non-resistance movement. The problem with this is, well, that can end pretty badly, but it is good in mass if you're going to do a protest, because you don't know what can happen if you have too many people with firearms and everybody's claiming self-defense. It's way easier to just stand your ground where you are, defend yourself, and like I said, protest taxation is a very good example. It's not the only thing you have to protest, but it is a good example. And there is a quote: whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, any form, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. So many people focus all their attention on altering, and they don't look at any form of government. They still uphold the republic, even though it got them to where they are today, and they have faith in such a system because it's their religion, and they still want to impose that in religion on everybody else, but they still forget what freedom is, what rights are. They can't define it, they don't understand it, and they don't understand what statism is. They don't consider the idea of abolishing the government, but perhaps that's a thing that needs to be done. That's why abolitionism is a thing, and that's why it was called that when it came to ending chattel slavery in the 1800s. It was called abolitionism. So I call myself an abolitionist because what am I doing? I'm tackling slavery. Modern abolitionism. I'm tackling slavery. That's what we're doing. And we're ending all forms of slavery, including political slavery. Your money does not belong to somebody else. It belongs with you. Okay? If somebody claims ownership over your property, they're claiming ownership over you. That is slavery. Okay, so you want to defend who you are. That's all you're doing, and stand your ground. If you could have one community do that, what a show that will do. That's step 4, is a show. But it's not just a show in that moment and a show for that time or for a big period of time. It's a show for all of history, and it's a show for the generations ahead. It's a show to the other countries. It's a show to people across the same country. It's a show that it will ever last because it's history in the making, and nobody has ever done it before, or with such grounds of means of understanding statism, or a website that leads people to more information. I mean, how much would this need to be covered up? How much would this cause so much controversy? But that's necessary in a world that fears it, that fears controversy, that fears facing the truth, that fears taking action. We need to take that action. That's why I'm here to inspire you, if anything. That's the most I can do, is just point and guide the way, but you have to be the one to take it. And you know what? We can do it together. But you probably know some communities that I don't. I'm not in communities. You know people that are connected. Maybe you've been in independent media for a long time. Maybe you have connections to people in independent media. You know? I don't know. But these are the steps that are required either way. This is known as the historic step. You need to embrace natural freedom and show why, using all the other steps, to all else. Okay? To everybody in the world. And people will follow suit. They will see it. They will do the same. And if they don't, they're cowards. And if they don't, they will feel guilt. Okay? If they don't. So either way, you're gonna win. Okay? Either way, you win. You're living out your destiny. You're doing what you can for this life. You're following your true will. You're following your purpose. You're being courageous. You're doing as much as you can for the truth. You're standing for nature in all ways possible. And the media attention comes in. You want to get trending courage on board. You want to have this community big enough to create such a demonstration. You want to have this ripple effect where other communities and other countries are starting to notice it. Now, maybe China is less free. Maybe you feel like other governments are going to start to bombard you. Well, guess what? Again, they're just going to stinking expose themselves. That's it. Okay? It really is that simple. And the light outshines the darkness, the fears, the hypocrisy. It shines it, okay? When you have the truth and it's so evident and it's so simple and clear and rooted, such as understanding what statism is, it is a beam of light into what's happening. If you've never heard of statism before, it's something that more and more people are starting to understand very quickly because of how powerful it is when it comes to the root to our freedom. And it's hypocrisy, again, when the government attacks its own people, or when people say that they want the truth but aren't courageous enough to act on it. So this applies to everything. Okay, step 1 carries on as a reminder. So if, let's say, we do free ourselves, we have this flag to say this is why it happened, right? Step 2 continues in the generations then to say, hey, Dad, what is this flag and what is it for? It's like, oh, well, you know, we freed ourselves, we defended our ground, we said, no, we're not paying these taxes, this is what government does, it's by its nature violence, it's a monopoly on violence, and that's all it does, right? Even Elon Musk says it, right? And it's those people who change the world, not the people with their involuntary hierarchies, you know, with violence trying to control everybody. It's the people who are courageous enough to create new ideas and go outside the box of things. Those are the people that change the world. And, you know, encourage your young ones and help them learn this knowledge. Even now, even if they're not free, help them see it, right? They'll be curious. They like art. They like nature. These things are great because we are meant to be free. We are naturally free. And that's why we freed slaves in the 1800s, because we recognize they are naturally free. And then we have with step 2, step 3 is seen as a valid option. Without understanding the education, without understanding that, you know, people have freed themselves before in history, well, in looking at previous revolution attempts as well, we wouldn't see defending ourselves as an option. We wouldn't see freeing ourselves as an option. It is totally valid, and we can prove that it's even more valid if we can commit to these action steps. We can prove that freedom is totally possible. All we have to do is simply always defend our nature. And that's why I say nature is the answer. That's why I have a flag for it. That's why I create a movement for it. It doesn't have to be just that movement, though. In many revolutions, there were many different flags. There were many different movements. But ultimately, some would get some more popularity than others. But ultimately, the ideas is what stuck at the core, okay? And yes, people are going to be questioning different motives. You may be questioning my motives. Well, guess what? My movement's not based around me. It's based around all of us. It's based around the ideas. We need to think like this, okay? Because this is what's going to change the world. Not putting select people in charge and saying, well, you got to do it all for me, and this person has great ideas, let's elect them as president. No. You want to be free? You have to free yourself. You have to commit action. How many people are willing to do that? I know you might say, not many people. We need to make baby steps. We need to get there. Well, then you don't understand what freedom is. You don't understand what statism is. You don't understand what it means to permiss wrongdoing, to permiss the ability for somebody to have rights that don't exist in nature. We cannot do it. We cannot go on with this. Okay, so you have the media coming in. However fake and twisted they are, people will see through it. You'll have people in denial of what's happening. Of course, they don't want to see it. They don't want to hear it, right? And they don't want to speak about it. But ultimately, it seeks down to their subconscious. It's a ripple effect, something new breaking news, right? It reaches the media, if not just the media, the television, the internet, the radio, the newspapers, magazines. You create your own too, just like the abolitionists did. Why not? Why not? Make it possible. Make it possible. Start somewhere among these 4 steps, but try to commit to all 4 of these steps. Try to unite people through step 1. Try to unite people through step 2. Unite, unite, unite. Don't divide. Don't unite in the superficial sense, like we need to unite everybody and there'll be peace. No, unite people with knowledge. Have them be on the same track. Understand what freedom is, and understand that if enough people know this knowledge, then they could take action. Because a lot of people might come up to you and say, well, what do we do? And it's like, I know what we do. It's very simple. Once enough people know this knowledge, we're out of the system. That's it. We're out. We just say no. That's it. One word. No. How hard is that? Well, that's it. 4 steps. Basically understanding what the world is, and then understanding what the fake world is. Enough to say, you're out of here. Abolitionism. Out with the bad, out with the unnatural, and in with the natural, in with what was intended of this world, which is your freedom. Do not let anybody else step on your rights, step on your freedom. Thank you very much. This is Cory Edmund Engerlot. Again, if you want to check out my book, Slavery Gone for Good, it's up to you, or The Most Dangerous Superstition by Larkin Rose. I'll put resources in the description below. I encourage you to check out a lot of this. I also have a lot of different forums representing these same 4 steps that you can also check out, like on nita.one, which is that movement website created. But ultimately, if we can commit to these 4 steps, I think it's great. Now, if you have any criticisms of this, or any additions that you want to add to this, or any parts within it, I'm sure you can criticize it. I'm sure you can add to it. Please share with everybody. But do something. Be the change. Don't just be the commenter. Don't just be the person watching the videos. Actually stink and do something. Put out videos. Educate people. Go to your neighbors. Put out pamphlets. Do something. Thank you very much. Cory Edmund Engerlot. Peace out.